Hello everyone, welcome back to Study Studio Saiankit. In this video, we'll be discussing the most famous monosaccharide, glucose. We'll be discussing what glucose is, where glucose is found and formed. We'll also discuss some physical properties of glucose in this video. Glucose is the most abundant monosaccharide. It is found in most of the fruits. The sugary taste you experience when you taste some fruits like apple, mango, pears is caused by glucose. The sweet in honey is again mainly due to glucose. You also have seen in your 10th grade about photosynthesis, right? That glucose is synthesized by plants using carbon dioxide and water. So there is a glucose that is prepared by photosynthesis. So by the procedure of photosynthesis, glucose is naturally generated or synthesized. But we can also prepare glucose in the laboratory. Okay, so let's put on our gloves and glasses and move to the lab to know how is glucose generated. The first procedure is as follows. Let us boil sucrose, also known as cane sugar, in dilute HCl or H2SO4 in alcoholic solution where we can obtain glucose and fructose in equal amounts. The equation that drives this above process is C12H22O11, which is nothing but the cane sugar we are talking about, the main reactant of our reaction. We'll be boiling the sucrose mixed with water in dilute HCl or H2SO4. The H plus ions you're finding on the reactant line is due to those dilute HCl and H2SO4. Then you would be obtaining glucose and fructose, which are completely different physical molecules. They are structurally also different but molecularly same. The molecular formula of glucose and fructose is same. These are the two molecules that we would be discussing throughout this chapter in the term of monosaccharide. The complete analysis of glucose and fructose is being done in this chapter. We are using the alcoholic solutions for a particular reason here. Glucose is less soluble in alcohol. It's a property of glucose that it is sparingly or less soluble in alcohol. This is due to which when it is mixed with alcoholic solution, fructose is actually more soluble in alcohol and hence they separate out when they are mixed with alcohol, and then by crystallization and on cooling then the more soluble fructose is left behind and it can be separated by filtration. So glucose and fructose are removed. Before we actually remove glucose and observe how it looks and feels like, let us also discuss another method to prepare glucose. Glucose can also be obtained by hydrolysis of starch by boiling it with dilute H2SO4 at 393 Kelvin under some pressure, approximately 2 to 3 atmospheric pressure. Starch or cellulose is a polymeric compound which has a lot of C6H10O5 molecules joined by some bonds. We'll also be discussing about starch in this chapter. When it is mixed with water or diluted in the presence of an acidic compound, a dilute H2SO4 to be precise, we get the glucose molecules. The first method that we have discussed is actually a laboratory method and it is not economically feasible to prepare glucose commercially using a sucrose or cane sugar by this method. But the second method that we have discussed, which is hydrolysis of starch, is very economically feasible and glucose is commercially prepared using this method, that is hydrolysis of starch. Now let us discuss some physical properties of glucose. Glucose looks something of this sort. It is a colorless, crystalline solid, which you can witness when you buy some glucon-D powder. The glucose looks and feels exactly same when you buy a glucon-D powder. They are colorless, crystalline solid molecules. Glucose is completely soluble in water. When you mix glucose in water, you can get a clear water after you mix it. It completely dissolves in water. You can also try this at home. Buy some glucose or glucon-D and mix it in water in a transparent glass and you'll observe that the water is very clear. That shows that glucose is completely soluble in water. But glucose is sparingly soluble in alcohol and insoluble in ether. The sparingly soluble in alcohol, this property made us separate glucose and fructose from the laboratory method we have discussed. This is done for this video. In the next video, we'll be discussing the cyclic structures, Haworth projections, and also chain forms of glucose. Until then, thank you. Bye. Signing off, Saiankit Study Studio.